Hi there, this is Julie.
And Sarah.
And this is my friend Story. She's our guest today on Talking Sis podcast. We're going to be sharing her experience on a form of dementia that has changed her life, and want to share the ways that it has changed so that people who are going through this can have a better understanding. What I'd like to do, Story, is just start off with you and your husband, and how did you guys meet?
So we met back in '88 at his high school graduation. And we became friends, but I always kind of like had this little fondness, maybe like a little crush, I guess. But I was with somebody at the time, he was with somebody, so we just kind of had the little friend group.
Spark.
And then he went in the Army, and I was like, hey, well, good luck in the Army. The last time I saw him, and he joined the Army in 90. He had gone in, and I had told him, like, look me up when you get out. You never know, I might be single. Just, kind of like an offhanded, like, funny remark. And lo and behold, months later, he actually showed up at my job. He found out where I worked, and he showed up at my job, and we hung out that night and talked. And so, of course, this was years and years, decades before, internet and social media and all that stuff. So it was just,
that was
letters
the way to communicate. Yeah.
And phone calls. So, I gave him my phone number. I gave him, my address.
Were you in a relationship, or you were single then, right?
I was single then. Yeah. So, I gave him my address, gave him my phone number, and, told him to keep in touch. But there wasn't even cell phones, so there wasn't even like you could shoot each other a text.
Yeah, no text.
It was just a landline.
Yep.
And I'll never forget, because he actually had called me. He had gone back to, North Carolina, where he was stationed, and he had actually called me, and I wasn't home. And I was so bummed because there was no number for me to call him. I just remember that being so bummed that he had called me and I didn't get to talk to him. He had gone into this was the start of Desert Shield, which eventually ended up Desert Storm. Was like one of the first troops that went over there. So he went over there, and it was probably like 2 or 3 weeks later, I got that first letter. And the addresses aren't like, regular addresses. It's these weird numbers and a couple letters here and there. So the first letter came and, told me, I can't really tell you a lot what's going on, but there is some biting. There is some of this and this and this. And, I don't know how long I'm going to be over here. Just kind of like basic stuff. And then that progressed. I was like writing him, I think, like every day.
Now, had you guys got to be dating yet?
No, we hadn't.
Just still like,
It kind of like, it was like a close friendship, and then it just kind of went into, well, I always kind of had a crush on you, and and he was like, yeah, I kind of figured, and yeah, I always thought, you were a pretty girl, and then it led into more of a relationship. He was in the military for 4 years.
Now, did you marry him in the military? Oh, that's right.
Yeah, he got out, and we had broken up at that point. And there was just like a lot of things that had happened. He just was needing to just sow his wild oats as a soldier. He had just gotten back from out of, a combat situation. And there's things that happen that he told me later on that, you can't even imagine. It's war. It's not pretty. There's things that you have to do. And
Steve was a sniper, right?
Yeah. And there's things that, you have to do that you don't want to do, kill people, but that's what it is. It's not pretty. So there was like all that, and the things that he didn't really want to talk about.
I remember you saying there was a big gap. Is that where the gap started? Is after the military, then you guys broke up?
Well,
or 50?
It was like in the early 90s we had broken up. And again, this was still years before social media, years before internet.
Yeah.
It was just all word of mouth, seeing somebody, this is how you found out what people were doing.
Could you imagine having to wait to wait for a response.
It would be like 6-7 days where there was like nothing, and then you get 4 letters in one day.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's like you're like looking at the postmark, and it's like, okay, I got to read these in order. Facebook came about, and he had shown up, under people you may know, and I was like, oh my God, there's Stephen Grant. Oh my. So, friend request, and I don't know. It was like I
And
think
was this
it was
2015 or before?
no. This was before. This was 2010.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, about 2010, 2011. And I remember it was like a couple weeks, and he didn't like respond, and I'm like thinking, geez, maybe he's like still mad at me or something. Like,
Right.
no, couldn't be. It's been a long time. And then lo and behold, one day, Stephen Grant accepted your friend request. And I was like, oh, wow. And I'm like, I guess he had to think about it, but it wasn't that. It was just that he hadn't been on. He
Right.
wasn't like on actively,
Like
regularly,
us.
it was kind of like here and there.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. And I kind of like stalked a little bit, to kind of see what he'd been up to, and saw that he had a son. He was married at the time and had a towing company. So he was like doing that, and, still doing the Christmas tree farm, Grant's Christmas tree farm. So, like, he had a pretty active, busy life. I was happy for him. And I was married at the time.
Yeah.
Yes. So I was going through a divorce, and he was going through a divorce. And, I was like, oh, wow, he's like going through divorce. I'm going through a divorce. What is this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, but you can't just assume, somebody's ready to start dating or ready for anything. So I commented here and there on different posts that he had, but like I didn't reach out. I was like pretty lonely. Even though I was doing hair, you still don't meet a lot of people. So that was around the time where everybody was doing online dating. It just like really came. This is how people meet now. It's not like old school. My friend had suggested, well, why don't you get on like a dating site? And, it doesn't mean you have to go out and sleep with 10,000 guys. Doesn't mean you have to even go out. Just meet people, talk to people.
Yeah.
Sometimes just having somebody, in the morning, good morning. It's like, oh, they're thinking of me. So I ended up getting on there, and I was like rolling through. And lo and behold, there he was. You're not gonna believe this. And she's like, what? And I'm like, I'm on that dating site that you told me about. And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, and I just saw my ex-boyfriend. She's like, say, hey, stranger. And I'm like, no, I couldn't. And she's like, do it. So I'm like, yeah, what have I got to lose? Like, if he doesn't answer, he doesn't answer. It's not like I'm gonna see him tomorrow, and feel embarrassed.
But yet again, the stars align that you're single, he's single, and to find him, there he is.
And there he is. And, like, you never give your real name. You give, like, some other name. And his was James. And I know that that's what his middle name is. So I was like, James. Yeah, okay, Steve. And Sagittarius, which I know he's a Sagittarius. I'm like, yeah, it's Steve. And it was like, hey, stranger, how you doing? And at first, like, he didn't really remember me. He was like, I feel like I should know you. And I'm like,
Probably
well,
recognize your picture or something.
I don't know. I said, well, he's like, well, he had a really bad concussion when he was in the army. He had gotten caught in a static line during a jump, and he banged his head on the side of the airplane. And actually like got knocked out. It was during a jump, so they had to actually like pull the parachute and land him safely. And then the medical team came, and that's when he.
Oh, that's crazy.
So like his memory was kind of fuzzy, and he was like, well, my memory, isn't that great like it used to be since that happened. And I was like, well, I'll give you a hint who I am. We dated back in the early 90s, and you were in the army. Instantly he was like, because you were really the only person that I dated. So he's like, yeah, oh yeah, okay, I remember you. And he's like, well, I'm just going to give you my phone number, because we obviously already know each other. So gave me his phone number, and we ended up talking for almost 8 hours that day. And then the next day, he called me, and he was like, what do you think? Do you think, maybe we could go out? And our first date, he told me how pretty I was and, just like, yeah, I remember you. And, I feel so bad, the way things ended. And I did look for you years later. Somebody had told me that you were working at some store and I went to that store and you weren't there that day. And he's like, I did try to find you. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, really? I regretted it.
How long did you guys date and then you got married?
We moved in together pretty
Quickly.
short period of time after
How
we
old were
started
you
dating. It was 2015, so it's like 40.
You started dating. Did it grow quickly that you knew you wanted to be married, right? Because
You know how like you kind of like secretly hope,
yeah,
like
yeah.
they can like every
Now,
Christmas,
when
so
you
they can
did
ask
you
every
not?
birthday.
What
No,
did you do?
he never did, and it was right around the holidays, 2017. And, I was like, do you think you'd ever get married again? And he's like, yeah, I'm still hopeful. I never really gave up because some people, they get hurt once
Yes.
and they shut down. But I've always been the type of person that, I just believe so strongly in love that I will never give up on love.
Yeah.
I will always be open to it.
Yeah.
I just don't feel like we're meant to be solo. Even some people that think that they want to be, I just feel like everybody needs a person.
Yeah.
And he really was my person.
Yeah.
We just had so much, could talk about anything, knew each other inside and out. He was my person, it was just all about Steve. So I ended up asking him to marry me. It was 2017 when I actually did. And I was like, Steve, I said, we should just get married. Like pass the peas. We should get married, because we were eating dinner. He was like, yep. And I was like, no, seriously. And I was like, Stephen James Grant, I love you. You love me. And I love our love story. You are my person forever. You know everything about me. You accept everything about me. Never ever had to force anything. I never had to guess how you felt about me. I never have to wonder, was he thinking about me? Does he love me as much as I love him? I mean, and still getting the little butterflies on date night and getting all dressed up and how do I look to I got appendicitis and I'm like throwing up in the bathroom and I'm going, stay.
Yeah.
Like it was just everything. So we got married in 2018 on Valentine's Day. And it was just pretty much us and a couple of friends. We wrote our own vows. It was great. And just had a really, really good life, had a really good relationship. Because we would just sit and on a summer night, we would just sit and like have a drink together and just like talk about people, talk about the weather, talk about the past, talk about the future, talk about all these different things. We just were always in sync. He knew that I was never able to have my own children biologically. I know you've always, wanted to be a mother. Would you want to adopt? Nobody's ever done that for me.
Yeah.
Ever. So that was huge. And plus, being older, most people pass that. So I was like, yeah. So we, went on the journey of adopting. We got her as soon as we got approved and we got matched with her, we got her. But they have to live with you 6 months,
6 months
before you can start adopting. The day that she got adopted, he cried. And he was like, this is a big day for her and a big day for us. So everything was good.
And that was in 2021.
Yep. I want to say 2022 into 2022 because he started working for Lowe's.
Right.
So remember at first he was like getting words mixed up. Like he will say something and it will not make any sense.
Yep.
Like
and I can remember him going over there,
over there.
Yeah.
But he hid it
Yeah.
for a while.
Yes.
Like learned little tricks. Like, oh, that over there. right over there, that thing right there, but
'Cause he
couldn't
couldn't say the
name
word.
what it was, but
Yeah.
you didn't think anything of it because
Right.
sometimes I do that. Well, that thing, oh my,
Yeah,
it's a cup.
like I know this is a cup, but we can't say cup. This thing, that thing that you drink.
Kind of like a brain fart.
Yeah, a brain
Yeah.
fart.
So that started happening. And then he was working at Lowe's, and he went to cash his paycheck, and he couldn't remember his social security number.
Mm.
So he was like, well, she knows it, and I'm like, well, wife knows more about them than they do, like
Yeah.
joking around. So then after that, the aphasia really started coming more and more, like the word salad, like that there, that person, getting names mixed up, not remembering people, remembering their faces but not remembering their names, seeing somebody but not getting the connection of who they are. So that started happening. And then, like, the scariest moment was he had ran out of gas, and he called me because he was still able to, call. And he called me and could not tell me where he was. I'm out of, I'm here. I'm like, where are you?
Yeah.
Well, I'm here. Well, I know you're here, but where is here? I went to put the thing in the thing, and now I'm here. So okay, so you left work. Where did you go? Well, I came over here to get gas. So I'm like trying to fill in, and he's like, yup. And you ran out of gas. Yes, you ran out of gas. Okay. So I'm like, tell me what's near you. And I'm like trying to think of the way he went, where he would have stopped. And we ended up he was on Main Street, and he was out of gas, and he was right across the gas station, and he didn't know enough to
cross and get some gas.
And he was just sitting there, and he didn't know what to do. Me and my daughter picked him up, and I said, okay, so you're all set. And I gave him the debit card, and he was just standing there, and he didn't. So I was like, oh, don't you, what's wrong? Is there something wrong with it? And well, I don't know. I don't know. It's stupid.
And he
It's
would
being
get
frustrated.
frustrated. Yeah.
Like there was something wrong with, and I'm like, well, how these
pump's not
things
working.
are.
Yeah.
I did it, and it was fine. So then there was that.
I don't know if it's our protective mechanism. It's not something that we want to put the label to right then, especially a 2-year-old man. Would you think of
And you don't want
dementia? Right. So I do think that that's a coping thing. Like you think cancer or something like that for his age, but not
Right.
a tumor or something like that, not dementia. He got diagnosed at 53, almost a year ago now, right? Last year?
Yeah, last year.
Yeah.
He's 55 now, so he was 54 at the time. Bruce Willis had gotten diagnosed, and I was like telling you, he can't
say what he,
say whatever. And I'm like, right. And you were like, that with the Bruce Willis.
Yep.
And I'm like, really?
And initially, it was so strong that the expressive aphasia really was the isolated piece that we were able to see from the outside, because he couldn't say what he wanted to say. But then now, 2 years later from that, you're seeing now not only is it expressive aphasia, but it is also, you said, the emotional piece that you're in the memory. It's not like Alzheimer's where your memory's gone. He has good days and bad days. He's able to recall a certain time. He's able to, like, when you came home the other day, the first thing he did was come right out and help you, which is routine, right? And he doesn't have the luxury of having Alzheimer's where you can just fall back on that routine all the time, because that's not all the time that is even he's able to do that. When I first was like, okay, he really needs to go to the doctor, and he really needs to be looked at, he didn't want to go.
You need to go to the doctors, you need to, well, why? I'm fine.
Didn't we figure, you finally figured it out, like to tell him something different to get him there?
All the while I'm Googling, and I'm like, it's definitely dementia. Because at this time, he's not bathing, he's not showering, he's not brushing his teeth. The hygiene has gone out the window. Whereas before, he took a shower every night, brushing the teeth, kept up with all of that. So I'm like Googling all of these symptoms, and I'm like, everything is like pointing to dementia. So we made an appointment with his primary, and he fought the whole way about it. And they did just the basic questions. And he was like, well, I don't need this because and they ask, and they're not specialists, but they'll ask you, do you have memory problems?
Nothing.
They have like a 10 question test. And first, it's just like, what's your name? What's your date of birth? Who's the governor? Who's the president now? Who's the ex-president? And he didn't know any of those things. Well, who's the governor? And he'd just go, well, I know her, but not be able to say who it is. So they were like, we need to get him in for an MRI. The sooner the better. Mood and memory, can't wait a year. We're going to pull some strings. We're going to get this happening. And he went into the MRI because they wanted to see, if there was, any a tumor, if he'd had a stroke, all of that stuff's going to show on a MRI brain scan.
And I think we were thinking more stroke initially anyways,
Right.
because
Or a silent stroke,
like
when
that silent
sleeping.
stroke, the ischemia, the inability to say what you want to say, that
Right.
expressive aphasia is one of the classic areas that you can have a stroke in. You hit.
Question, how did he do during the MR?
And he's like, I just laid there, and the tech, he's like, yeah, he just laid right there. I want to say probably like a week or two, and they called me and they said they had the results, and he had some loss of brain mass. And the brain scan is indicative to dementia. At the moment, I'm just like, oh, like, no. And it was just like that moment of I'm just gutted right now, because that there's nothing that they can do. It's just going to get worse. It's not going to get better. There's no hope. There's no,
cure.
There's no chemo. There's no magic pill. There's no therapy. There's nothing. So, and we need to get him specialists. He's seeing a neurologist. Neurologist has said yes, it's definitely the frontal temporal dementia. And he's been seeing the Dr. Otis at Mood and Memory for close to a year. He got disability pretty much immediately because of the compassionate care allowance. So that's where we're at. And to see him change so much, like he's just like a shell, of what he used to be. Like, there is no yin and yang that we used to have. It's all me, because he doesn't feel like, he doesn't know what love is. I know him so well that I see in his eyes, he's in there. Neurologist looks at you with these sad eyes. This is what he's got. We don't know if it's genetic, what causes this to happen in the body, and in the brain, but there's nothing we can do. Someday, clinical trials, but there's just support. And I hope you have a good support system. At that moment, you're just like, no, I don't. I'm alone.
You're a strong, independent woman, and you can carry yourself. But when you're tired of being strong,
right,
that's where you need someone.
I mean, this is a guy that could take a motor out of a car, at Kenny U-Pull right there in the lot. He would be able to do electrical work. He would be able to troubleshoot anything. He would just be able to just fix anything. Well, if they don't find you handsome, they better find you handy, like, and he would say that all the time. And I'm like, well, lucky for you, you're both, but not to have that. There's times where I'll just look at him and I'll just be like, I just want you back. Can you just, and if you can't come back, I just want you to pass on. And a lot of people don't understand that, but it's like, you get to that point and you don't want to use the word burden, but they become a burden. he cannot do anything for himself. You have to tell him to take a shower. He doesn't know enough to turn the water on. He gets in the shower. What do I do? So he just stands there. Yeah. He doesn't even wash up because he doesn't know to. Yeah. And then he just gets out of the shower and the water's running. Yeah. He can't even check the oil in my car. I have to do it. Yeah. And, just all of those little things that you take for granted that now it's like on me. So true. Thousands and thousands of people that, are going through the same exact thing. And I'm in multiple Facebook support groups. And nobody ever says, well, you shouldn't feel that way. Yeah. I mean, there's been days where we're having a conversation, not like what we had, but the old Steve would like come out. Like I would say, I'm so tired, and he would say, tell me about it, and it's like, there he is, or, this is so, this rain is like depressing. Oh, tell me about it. Or yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh, those are his favorite. And it's like every once in, like sometimes there are days where, he'll make the coffee. Yep. And not miss a beat. Can you make the coffee? Yep. Can you take the trash out? And he'll go right over and do the trash and, yep, I got it, and go out. And then there's other days where, he'll just stand there and ponder to try to figure out what it means to take the trash out. Right. Where is the trash? Whereas, he's outside looking around, walking around outside, and I'm like, no, the trash in the kitchen, take it outside. Yeah. Oh, every visit there's something new. He goes once every 3 months. And, they do the checks, because there's other things that this can turn into, like the Lou Gehrig's disease. And so they're constantly like monitoring and keeping an eye on the physical aspect, the balance, the swallowing is a big thing. Because they eventually lose function. The brain is shutting down. The brain is dying. So, and that's what ends up happening is they forget all of their bodily functions. They end up wetting themselves. We're not there yet. It's a lot for an adult. It's a lot for, anybody. It's stress. Yeah. Like the stress of you basically become their caregiver. You're not I mean, yes, I still love him, but it's not the same. Yeah. It's not going to be the same. Right. I mean, you're not intimate with them anymore. I mean, he doesn't have any interest, hasn't for like a year. Mm-hmm. No, like doesn't bathe. That's not real turn on, they don't bathe. Don't brush their teeth, like none of that's, a turn on. So it's like your feelings change when you have to take care of somebody that way. Right. And what's like gonna come. Yeah. So. And all the time you're doing this, in the back of your mind, you're letting go. This is not easy. This is not a choice. Right. It's not a linear choice where you choose one day you love your husband and one day you don't. I try to put myself in people's shoes to try to understand. Right. And for me, for you, how could anybody pass a judgment on anything that you do other than try to help you? You can't live in the grief. It's just like if somebody died. You can't live in this grief of, like, I lost them, I lost them, I lost them, I lost them, they're gone. You can't live like that day to day to day. You have to somehow, find an ordinary. I think one of the things that really got to me was the song Ordinary World by Duran Duran. And the lyrics is like, I've lost this extraordinary person and I'm just trying to survive in this ordinary world and try to find an ordinary world. And I can't cry for yesterday. Right. I can't live in that. Where's my best friend, gone away? That's like part of the lyrics, where's the life that I recognize? Gone.
Right.
All of that stuff is gone. So it's like I'm trying to just find this new normal.
Mhm.
And what that looks like for me is probably not what people can say, oh, I would never
Yeah.
do this, that, or the other, or whatever.
You're the one that experienced it all. Me on the outside, I'm experiencing it from a different level, from a friend. I'm not the one that's there day in and day out. And now you're doing everything.
Right.
And it's not that you don't want to do that. That is your wifely duty. That is what you do. That is why you are adjusting.
In my mind, while we're talking, I think of like a road that you're walking and you see the person that you care about so much right in front of you. They're the person that I remember, the person that I married, the person that I have so much love for, the father to my child. And we're walking the same way, but it just gets longer and longer and
To
longer.
get to him. Yeah.
I could not ever imagine that.
Like so many things that we were gonna do, and it's like he can't do any of those things. Like, I don't want to do it alone. Yeah, I have my daughter, and it's good, that I have her.
Yeah.
But there's things that a 16-year-old kid shouldn't have to deal with,
Right.
shouldn't have to talk
Right.
about. I guess society saying, oh, but what about your husband? Oh, you're married. Yes, I am. I am married, and yes, I do love him. And I will never, ever abandon him, and I will never, ever give up on him. But he is not the same person. He doesn't even know who I am. He doesn't know love. He doesn't know caring. All of that is gone. He has to be told to eat. He has to be told what to eat. I mean, he will just sit there and eat, a whole loaf of bread. He will eat a whole thing of cough drops thinking it's candy. He's eating dog food. He has to talk himself through, basic things. And it's just sad. Very, very sad.
All I want to do for you is support you, love you, be there for you when you need someone. We wanted to share this so people can have an understanding of what it is like to be living with someone who has dementia at their early 50s. I think every day brings new challenges and a way for you to handle it. And I think what you're doing is honorable. You are handling it the way you know how with what you have. And who is anyone to judge?
The bottom really has dropped out.
Right.
You have to find a way to get through, and find your happiness through the storm.
Yeah.
Because why, just because this unfortunate thing has happened, why should I live in misery? Your husband has dementia. You're supposed to be miserable all the time. You're not supposed to find happiness. What do you mean? You feel a little guilty. You feel a little like, I'm not supposed to be happy, but,
Right.
I mean, you have to be. You have to. That's part of being strong, is finding the peace and
Light
I think
And I hope
supporting somebody, I'm with you with condition. It's I'm with you no matter what.
yeah,
That's the true definition of support.
or support. What a beautiful lesson that is in life.
Mm-hmm.
To truly be there for someone means to really be there for them. I hope people get an insight to this and are able to share.
So it's frontal temporal dementia. It used to be called Pick's disease with the primary progressive aphasia, and he's 55.
Yeah. And you can research and get online. And if you know of anybody or you're in this situation, there are support groups out there. I think that, as you said, is so helpful to not judge one another. She said she's in a support group where she can say and be who she is without any
and
repercussion.
Everybody can, no, because we're all in it. We all feel it. We all know what it's like. So,
and you're not in there to judge and tell people the right way of doing it. There is no right way. Each person's situation is their situation. And you can share love and support. Thank you for joining in. God bless, guys. Take care. Bye for now.